Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in today's Tableau CRM video, I think I just rebranded. Well, enough about me. Let's get on with the video. I love that intro bumper. Makes me feel like a real YouTuber. And it's good to have the red title card rocking again. It's been a while since I've done anything on advanced data modeling. But tonight we're going to be covering everything that you should and should not do with multi-value fields. So what are we looking at right here? I've got 3 records of Mega Multi Mayhem. This is a custom object I've created for the purpose of this video. And since I will be doing some roll-ups, I had to create a parent object, but I got lazy and just created 1 record. And since I only got to have 1 parent, I decided to call it Mom. Next, we have a multi-select pick list with the values of A, AB, and ABC. And then we have that same thing in string form. And I've opted to use a comma space delimiter instead of a semicolon to show different use cases we can do with that. And then we've got a boring string that we're going to use for some of our boring rollups. Now, first, I have covered this topic before to some degree in Data Flow Basics, Volume 1, Part 3, Roll Up Anything. But we're going to start with a brief refresher on that, so you don't have to watch 2 videos, you can just watch 1. So first, the normal behavior of a multi-value field. So I've got a data set that I have created here. It's pretty simple. You can do get parent and use a roll up on your boring string or on your multi-value and set it to look up multi-value. And that's how you could bring, for example, a property from opportunity rolled up to account. And all you really need to do is reverse the relationship. So normally you want your parent on the right and your child on the left. We reverse that relationship. We set it to look up multi-value. This is going to sum any numerical fields, and it's going to create multi-value dimensions from any text fields. Do not try this with date fields. As per documentation, you can expect unpredictable and wildly inaccurate results. So don't do it. But as we all know, date fields are jerks. So don't do it. Then what we see in Analytics Studio, we're going to go and create a dashboard. And let's have a look at our MMMs. So if we just bring in that MMM, the native behavior of a multi-value field on grouping, we're going to get 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C, which can be counterintuitive to end users. So I recommend that you exercise caution when grouping by this, especially if we were aggregating a numerical field. It could present skewed results, especially if you're totaling that up. Because at a glance, it looks like we have 6 records in the system, but we actually only have 3. But the truth is we have 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C. So what we are seeing here is accurate, although it can be counterintuitive. But from a filtering behavior, or if you were to use this multi-value field as part of your security predicate, the behavior is just magnificent. I want to see my B's. Now let's group by our record name instead. I'm sure I've got it around here somewhere. Record ID is good enough. We see that, yes, I do in fact have 2 records with a B in it. So from a filtering perspective, multi-value fields are incredibly powerful for filtering your dashboards by, something that you can't do in a standard report. Just show me everything that includes this value. You have to create includes formula fields. It's a nightmare. It's very difficult to get a clear perspective of what things are. And the behavior of multi-selects in core is distinct and different from multi-values in analytics. So I will always use those terms differently because they are very much not the same thing. So the next thing that we want to cover is the tabular limitation. So clear out this filter right here. Now, what if I just wanted to see my multi-value field in a values table? Well, the problem, as we can see right here, is that our multi-value is just going to return the very first value. And there is a method to get around this. I'm unable to demonstrate this from a Trailhead environment. There is a new feature in setup that you can enable that is for indexing multi-value fields. This can potentially cause minor performance issues with data flows because it has to index all of that. But we're talking about if you have, dozens and dozens of multi-value fields with potentially hundreds of values, you could take a performance hit to your data flow. In most scenarios, you should be good to go. And the thing with that, though, the other gotcha to that is that it's only a SACL-based function. So I don't have this turned on right now, but the function is pretty straightforward. You would just wrap this in MV to string. And if this feature was turned on in setup before the last time the data flow ran, this would display that exactly as we're seeing it here. But if that's all you need to do, if that's all you need to do is just show me the delimited string in a table, we actually have a much simpler approach to that. And I have this in a different data flow. So all I've done here is you'll notice how this has the little, I'm writing on a piece of paper logo instead of the pencil. What you do is you uncheck this is multi-value checkbox, and that's going to tell it, no, this is not a multi-select field, treat it like a string. And by default, it's smart enough to know. And the reverse of this is also true. So if we were to take our delimited string right here, we could tell it, hey, no, this is multi-value, and we could pass in the multi-value separator of comma space. Multi-value separators are restricted to a maximum of 2 characters, and they can be any characters that you like. All of this is thoroughly covered in documentation. Google SFDC digest parameters, and you'll get the information you need. So the next, and I will actually real quick just show that behavior on the other data set that I have. So we can see multi as string. When I group by my multi-value field, it does come through as an A, an AB, and an ABC. And before you get all cheeky and think, well, I can just create 2 digests in the same data flow. Well, did you wonder maybe why I created 2 different data flows? Because I did. I originally put these both in the same data flow, but I found that with one digest calling for it to be multi-value and one digest calling for it to be a string, that I got inconsistent behaviors, and both data sets would be the same. They'd either both be a multi-value or they'd both be a string, and running the data flow multiple times, every time it would trigger replication, and it would decide which one of those digests it wanted to use the metadata for, and it would apply that to both data sets. So if you do want to do that, I will be covering how to have your cake and eat it too a little bit later on, but it's not quite as simple as just having 2 digests and then trying to combine them into one. So now let's actually go beyond the basics and let's get into some of that advanced data modeling that I promised you. And we're going to talk about how to flatten that to a multi-value field. So right here, we are taking this. This is string to multi. We are taking that string field and we're casting it as text. Now that alone is not smart enough to do it. And this is not documented. Therefore, I would assume it's not officially supported. Therefore, if it breaks, don't call support crying about it, but you can post on the community and somebody might help you. The same parameters that we find in the SFDC digest does also work in a compute expression. So all I had to do was borrow this guy right here, is multi-value true, and I pasted it into my compute expression parameters in my JSON editor. So this cannot be done through the UI. You just got to pull the JSON down, add it, comma right here at the end of that, and is multi-value true. And that alone is enough to create a multi-value field out of a compute expression. So the scenario by which you could have your cake and eat it too is you could bring it in as a string and then flatten it to create that multi-value. And again, in this case, I believe, did I actually give it the multi-value separator? Because if I didn't, this totally isn't going to work. Right here, we do also have to give it the parameter of a multi-value separator. And in this case, we do see, that's why I did the comma and a space instead of a semicolon. The purpose of that was to demonstrate that, yes, we can have multi-character delimiters. So the next trick that we're going to show, actually, I suppose it would be nice to see that in the UI. Can we see that in the UI, please? Yes, yes, we'd like to. So I'm going to show MMMs. And if I group by that delimited string that what field did I create that into? Being sloppy here. I called it string to multi. So string to multi, look at that. It's now a multi-value field. So that most definitely works even though we can see that the string itself if we group by the string itself, maybe pull this guy up a layer, we do see that, AB returns both an A and a B, ABC returns both as an A, a B, and a C, and the A only row returns as an A. So that is the behavior that we would expect, and that's a really nifty trick. So now we have our multi-value as both a multi-value and as a delimited string. So let's talk a little bit more about that basic stuff. So again, what if mom wants to know? What if we want to roll boring string up to the mom level? So to do that, that's what we do over here. So we get the parent. We're joining this down just so that I can have it on the data set, for funsies. But we're actually going to create a row where there's just one row per parent. So we do that in this roll up, and we can see that with the basic string. So if we go to the parent object data set, and even though we only have one row, if we group by the boring string roll up, we see that we get an X and a Y and a Z, because that's really what's going on. What if I wanted that behavior where I could see this as a delimited string? Well, couldn't I just cast it? Now, see, the problem is once a multi-value field is a multi-value field, you can no longer use it in computeExpressions. And it's going to throw an error on you that multi-value fields are not supported in computeExpressions, which is unfortunate, but it is true. So how do we get around that? What if we wanted to have our cake and eat it too on the parent level? Or another thing would be, what if we wanted to maybe not display these in alphabetical order? Maybe we have a different order that we want to get them to appear in. Maybe we want to go high to low on a numerical value, or just in general have more preciso control. So for that, what we're going to need is what I call the double compute relative. So first, we're going to take that flattened multi-value source. We're going to partition by IDs, because this is going to get rolled up to the parent, but I've only got 3 rows in here anyway. You're going to want to partition by whatever the grouping is. So, maybe the parent ID or something like that. In my case, there's 3 rows in the data set. Who cares what we partition by? But your order by needs to be whatever it is that you're trying to concatenate. And to demonstrate that I wanted to do reverse alphabetical, I opted to have that descending. Now, mind you, that it doesn't, I guess that's a bit of an overstatement. It doesn't have to be the thing that you want to concatenate, but in my case, it's always, so far in the use cases that I've tackled with this, it's always been that thing, but maybe you want it to be created date. You want to list the products that were added to an opportunity in the order in which they were added. Now, from this, what you're gonna do is create this field called string list. And this one's actually going to fall on the cutting room floor. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to coalesce on the previous string list. And the reason why, you can refer to the field. This is a self-referential function, and it's only supported with the previous function. So again, with compute relative, we're iterating over rows of child records under a common parent in most cases, or in my case, since I'm using ID, we're iterating over all rows in the object. But we're also going to be concatenating, and null plus anything equals null. So we do have to coalesce, and we're going to coalesce with an empty string. So this way, the first record, instead of returning null plus boring string, it will return it'll return a blank string plus comma space plus boring string. Now you're going to say, well, hey, wouldn't that result in comma A? And then on the next row, it would be comma A, comma B, and then comma A, comma B, comma C. Well, you're exactly right. And while that is pretty ugly, that's not something that we can't get around. And you'll see how we tackle that right here. So now that we've computed down, we want to do the exact same thing. Whatever you partitioned and ordered by, it has to be the exact same for both of these compute relatives. But if you were sorting descending before, you want to sort ascending now, and vice versa. And then for our delimited string, what we do is we say substring the first string list starting at the 3rd character. So we're going to snip off that comma space and just start with the first character. Now, since we reversed order, on the previous one, our first row is going to give us comma A, our second row is going to give us comma B, or comma A, comma B, and our third row is going to give us comma A, comma B, comma C. So by using the first function, we're going to return that comma A, comma B, comma C to all rows by using the first function. And the reason that we don't just use source field and first is because we do want to snip off that original comma space. So we want to start at the third character, which will be the A. And then we can do a roll-up single. And the reason why is because we don't want to create a multi-value field out of that, because it would give you a multi-value field that would just return A, comma B, comma C. What we do want is we want a single value. But since this is going to be the same across all rows, if there's multiple records on the right side and only a single record on the left, which is, you know, the scenario that we have here, and we choose lookup single value, it's just going to kind of rando guess which one of those records to return. But since all of those records have the same value, it works just fine. We could also, you know, deduplicate the, if we find that this augment is running too slow, what we can also do is use a third compute relative to remove the duplicates within the data set. I cover this in Dataflow Basics Volume 2, using the compute relative transformation to remove duplicates from your data set. You basically want to do a case when ID equals first ID, then keep else drop end, and then run a filter where keep equals true. That's going to reduce the volume, but you only really need to do that if you're running into performance issues. If you find that this roll-up single augment node is taking a really long time, then that's when you would want to do this. So let's take a look at that on our data set. And we've got our parent object. We're going to group by our delimited string. And yeah, clearly it does not seem to have worked. I must have done something wrong here. We're going to take a quick pause, do some troubleshooting, and come back and see if I can get that working. So it turns out we actually had a double derp, but it looks like we were able to fix it relatively quickly here. And let's walk through what those derps were. So the first of the two derps is I was ordering by string, which is our ABC, the comma separated field here. And since boring string is the one that we actually want to display in reverse alphabetical order, that should have been our order by field. Now, the next derp was that I was partitioning by ID, which means that every record was going into its own bucket. So I was only going to get the values for one given record. Every record was going to be the first and the last and the middle and all of them things. I did need, in fact, to group by the common parent. So if you did want to iterate over an entire object, you'd probably just want to like do a compute expression, create a field called, you know, analytics partition field, give it a value of X or whatever, so that it's the same for all records. But since parent is the same for all records, and I do want them, you know, iterating over a common parent, I did need to set that to be my partition. So I made that update for both of our computes, parent and boring string, parent and boring string. So if you got all really gung-ho when you saw how to do this and you're taking screenshots and you're wondering why it's not working, wait to watch the rest of the video because I don't always test before I record. But now we can see what the behavior for that is. And we can hop over here and we can go to our parent object and we can group by our delimited string. Z, Y, X, and it is comma delimited. There is no leading comma space. We were able to snip this off. So if you just want to know, like, you know, what are the assortment of dimensions available across my child records, this works extremely well. Something else I want to show is that notice how our multi-value field, we have an A and an AB and an ABC. This, when you roll up multi-value fields, so you're basically creating a multi-multi, it doesn't actually happen. You don't end up with like a two-dimensional array of arrays. What you actually end up with is a deduplicated alphabetical listing of that. So what we can see is I do end up with an A and a B and a C. So if you roll up a roll up, you can get it to deduplicate, which is super cool in and of itself. So between the different things that I've shown tonight, you could also then do another flattened multi-value compute expression after your roll-up single to get your have your cake and eat it too, where you could have the boring string as both you know, delimited text in whatever order you prefer, as well as a multi-value field. You can have your cake and eat it too. We can filter by it. We can group by it. We can do all of the things. So if there's anything that you've learned tonight, it should be that the multi-value field within Tableau CRM is possibly the most undersung and underrepresented data type that's available to you. It is extremely powerful when used correctly, and it'll confuse the heck out of end users if not used correctly. So that's all we've got for tonight. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.